Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, there is talk of Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora 2 and that could happen next. Negotiations are underway apparently according to David Higgins, and Joe Parker seems to believe that this time around he can do a better job of it. Now of course last time there was a little bit of controversy. Chisora said he should have gotten the nod in the post-fight interview. He said that he's fed up with this happening because he puts in that kind of performance, gives it his all, but he doesn't seem to get anything for his effort. And that happened against Usyk and against Joseph Parker, his last two fights, in his opinion. So it is good that Joe Parker would be happy to give him a rematch. He said that in the post-fight interview. Even Andy Lee came in and he said that after the fight had finished, he told Joseph Parker, "I'm not sure if we got that one." But still they got the nod, and Andy Lee, Joe Parker said they would be happy to give Derek Chisora that rematch, and that is the one that could be on the cards next for both fighters. Now, the first fight was pretty good. It was a damn good heavyweight slugfest. Joe Parker was the one who was a little bit more neat, and his work was more tidy. The punches were cleaner, and probably easier to score when Joe Parker landed, whereas Derek Chisora was working more down to the body to slow the younger man down. Chisora was incredible how he was stalking him, walking him down, pressuring him, and as I said, working down to the body. However, Joe Parker did have his moments in the fight and he did come on strong as he warmed into the contest, and as maybe Derek Chisora started to feel the fatigue and the pace of the fight, especially given the pace he was setting. There weren't too many signs of that, which is incredible considering he's a guy who's over 17 stone, nearly 18 I think going into that fight, and he's able to maintain that kind of pressure, which is incredible. Still, Joe Parker did find a way back into the contest, and of course that is the reason why they gave him the nod, because he was coming on strong in the mid to late rounds. You could give it either way, you could even give it a draw. It was an extremely close fight, and I did like what I saw from Joe Parker. I think we need to see more of that. Andy Lee said between rounds in the corner, "You're the bigger, stronger man, make it count." So he was being marched down, pushed back by Chisora a little bit too much for Andy Lee's liking. He would have liked to see Joe Parker push him back, lean on him, make it rough and tough for Chisora himself. And I guess if they are looking to put a little bit more of that fighting spirit in Joe Parker, I don't want to be disrespectful, but he is more of a boxer than a fighter, and sometimes it does take him to get a little bit stuck in, like it did against Dillian White and in the Chisora fight. That needs to be there for Joe Parker because he can't always box his way to a victory. That is very important to have those fundamentals, but sometimes it takes a performance where he has to get stuck in, and Chisora is the best kind of fighter to bring that out of him. Going in there with fighters like Junior Farr, that isn't going to be able to achieve what Joe Parker wants or what he needs, because that is a guy who will try and box Joe Parker, and Joe Parker will try and do the same. So in that instance, it's kind of up to Joe Parker to go after the fight. We saw the same against Hughie Fury, and look at the performance, look at the fight we got to see in both of those contests. Now, look at the fighter we got and look at the fight we got when Joe Parker stepped in with Dillian White, with Derek Chisora, someone who forces him to fight a certain way. Then you get a different side to Joe Parker, but in that Dillian White fight, it took him a few rounds to kind of warm into that fight because it wasn't a fight he anticipated having. He anticipated outboxing Dillian White, but White was not going to allow that to happen, to let round after round slip by being outboxed. He was going to make it rough and tough, make it difficult for him, hit him hard and often, back him up, lean on him, push him back, all of those things. Chisora done the same. So Joe Parker needs to be in there with that kind of style if he is going to get any better. We even saw him go into his shell against Anthony Joshua. We didn't really see him chase the fight. It was obvious that he was behind, and it was abundantly clear who was going to win that fight, especially going down the stretch into the later half. Anthony Joshua was in control. Joe Parker's jab was out of range the whole evening. AJ just had the reach advantage, the size, and the boxing ability to navigate someone like Joe Parker. Had Parker had a go at him and stepped on it, then maybe he could have found something from the fight. Maybe not winning it, but just not going the distance with Anthony Joshua. It's not about that. It's not about taking him the distance. It's about trying to get something from it. So had he stepped on it, had he walked him down and tried to get in close, yes, he could have gotten stopped because of walking onto a punch, but still he's going out on his shield and he's not letting his world title go, just sticking to the same game plan and not changing things up. And of course it is easy to say, it's another thing going in there with AJ, someone who's 6'6" and 17.5 stone, punching that hard, with that jab as well, because there is a lot of weight on that jab also, and it's constantly landing. So it's not easy for someone like Joe Parker, or anyone for that matter, to just walk him down. I mean, I know that Ruiz done it, but he had to walk past a right hand every time he did, and in the second fight, I mean, that did discourage him. Anytime he got brave, AJ landed that right hand, and that stopped him in his tracks. Now, Joe Parker, some say he gave up after a few rounds. He kind of just accepted what was going to happen and wanted to see the final bell. At least that is what Tony Bellew's assessment of it was. He said that Ruiz in the second fight never gave up at all. He kept trying to win and kept trying new things to try and walk Anthony Joshua down, to get close to him and essentially do what he'd done in the first fight. Now, he said that Joe Parker, after a few rounds of not being able to land his jab, not being able to implement his style and game plan on AJ, he did go into his shell and decided to see the fight out and at least see the final bell. Because realistically, when Joe Parker is in there trying to box with someone who has those physical advantages over him, who can match his speed and has more power than him, probably a better jab as well. I mean, Joe Parker's game plan was to double it up and come around. That didn't really work out for him because he was disrupted by Anthony Joshua's jab all the time. So it was difficult for him to get that off because AJ's jab was in his face all the time, disrupting his work. Now, in that instance, if he continues to box, then, as I said, AJ has the physical advantages and the ability to navigate him when he does that. Now, if he mixes things up, looks to get close, I mean, I know the ref was breaking them on the inside all the time, and that was extremely annoying for both fighters, I would imagine. But still, he needs to find a way to navigate that kind of fighter, but to adjust also. It's about making the adjustments. At that level, if a fighter cannot adjust, then they are going to be unable to match a fighter like Anthony Joshua, like Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte, those kind of fighters who are able to adjust as fights go on. Going back to Derek Chisora, he has a style that works well for Joe Parker to work on that kind of thing, to work up close and on the inside, to try and box someone who isn't going to allow him to box. That is what Chisora brings to the table. That is what he brought to the table last time around, and it was an epic fight. Joe Parker in there with Junior Farr, Hughie Fury is never going to be a good fight, but in there with someone who forces him to fight a certain way, walks him down, pressures him, then you have to see a different side to Joe Parker. Otherwise, he isn't going to get the victory. So seeing that fight again is going to be a great contest for fight fans to see, but it also is integral to the development of Joe Parker to learn this new kind of rugged style, to be able to adjust to that when certain things do not work in the boxing ring. He's had one fight with Derek Chisora and we saw some improvements. He was rougher, he was tougher, and he didn't really play possum at any point in that fight, which we did see against Dillian Whyte. So clearly working with Andy Lee is bringing a new side to Joe Parker. Let's see one more and see what they can do after a 12-week camp and the time in between they have spent since the last Chisora fight. Let's see the difference, let's see the improvements, because if this is working, then we will see a different Joe Parker to what we did last time, and someone who is able to navigate that kind of style a lot better. So I am all for this rematch and I hope it happens sooner rather than later. Apparently negotiations are underway to stage it next. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.